Okay, so we're recording now. So if you first just want to start off and state your name and kind of your position at the charity village.
So I'm Lerryn Campbell, and I'm the advocacy coordinator for the homeless charity. We're located in the Middlebury neighborhood of Akron, Ohio.
And how long have you been with the charity?
So actually, I started with the charity prior to when it was formally a 501(c). Um, I worked in the building at 15 Broad as with the Rubber City auctions, and it became evident to us that there was a need in that area. A lot of our houseless friends would show up to auctions, and we were able to bridge them with some work. And we also had a lot of extra items that didn't sell at the end of auctions, and so it became the brainchild to start a thrift store that was run for the homeless by the homeless, with those extra items and some space that was available at 15 Broad. And so that's sort of organically how things started with the homeless charity and village.
So can you kind of give your background or experience with the homeless and what that's been like? 'Cause I know I talked with Elena on Thursday, and she said that you had been working with the homeless since you were like 18 years old, I think is what she said. So can you kind of just talk about that and your experience with it?
Sure. So I came to Akron U in 1992, and my first experience there as a volunteer with what we like to call the houseless community was at St. Bernard's Soup Kitchen. So that started my journey with the advocacy for our friends who are without um, four walls and a roof, if you will. And it was a humbling experience. Sort of everything that I thought I knew about people who were were houseless or considered homeless turned out to really not be the case. And so getting to know their individual stories and how just some personal contact on a weekly basis with the same person or bi-weekly basis, depending on when they would show up, really was quite an amazing experience for me. And these people became people that I grew to care about, and really considered some of them to be friends.
That's awesome. So we're going to kind of jump into the COVID and how the charity has kind of dealt with that. So prior to COVID, approximately how many homeless would you serve, um, like daily?
So I would definitely say that it's hard to project daily, because we have obviously we have a group of board members, and then we have a group of people who have been sponsors and supporters, and any given day each one of us might be reaching out to a variety of people. So foot traffic wise, we might see between 20 and 100 people in a day. But we might also be communicating via various modes with several other people who are in various stages of transition or needing support with birth certificates, social security cards, rides, referrals. And so it's less, I think, about foot traffic and more about how many contacts we make in a day.
So how has COVID, I guess, changed that, or what precautions have you guys been taking in order to still reach out to the homeless and be able to help them?
So our outreach center at 15 Broad, which they've coined Lerryn's Closet, much to my humbled surprise. I would prefer it be named something else, but at any rate, we are not allowing anyone in the building. So all of our services are happening outside. We have PPE and hand sanitizer, and we're very cautious about the items that come in to make sure that we're not cross-contaminating anything. So we do provide some hot meals out of there. We provide snacks. There's camping gear, clothing, toiletries, and so we're trying to make sure that the contact with the folks that we're with, that our folks are taking the most precaution, and that we're also offering the PPE to our houseless friends that are coming there as well.
So why is it so important to raise awareness about the homeless community in general, and also especially during this pandemic that we're dealing with right now?
So some of the basic needs that our folks were gaining by businesses, other local charities, and government agencies, the dynamic of those changed. And so our biggest need that we saw initially with the pandemic was that our folks didn't have access to water. So our folks in the past might be able to go to a local restaurant or a business, and they might be able to fill their water jugs there. And those things came to a screeching halt. And so water became our biggest need. And so we began finding sort of inventive ways to get water to them. And so we created hand washing stations with recycled water bottles, gallon bottles, um, laundry soap bottles, anything that we could put water in, and we were attaching soap containers to those and dropping them off at camps, and also having those outside of our building so that folks could come by and grab those. So access to the ability to remain sanitary was pretty huge in this era. Sorry, my daughter just walked in. So things that we took for granted prior. So water always was a need, but it became a dire need during this pandemic.
And then can you kind of explain like how many volunteers you have and how one can become a volunteer if they want to help out with the homeless?
Sure. So depending on what our particular event or initiative is at the time, our volunteer staff sort of varies by that. So our closet is open currently Monday through Thursday. And so we have volunteers that come and help run that. And then we have once a month events that Ashley Hughes heads up with her volunteer staff. And those can be anywhere from, sometimes there's 25 to 30 volunteers for those events. Yesterday, they partnered with Hope Farm and Middlebury Chapel and served over 130 people a Thanksgiving meal yesterday. And so that took a lot of volunteers and donors to put on that event.
That's all I have. Tyrese, did you want to add on to anything or ask any other questions?
Yeah, yeah. So you said, you serve a lot of people a day, and you create bonds with these people. You know what I mean? What is the most important thing that you think that people recognize? You know what I mean? Coming in and out of that, having that resource that they come to. What do you think is important that they? What do you think is important that people know about? Why these places exist?
So first and foremost, I think building some sort of community. So I think that that's what the homeless charity probably our biggest success when we were a full-on tent city with a community outreach was that there was a place of community. And when you build community, people feel like they have worth and dignity, and they feel like they have a place. And so many of our folks are transitional. And so finding that place that seems like familiar or home, or that friendly face that knows you by name. And so that's what I feel like we have the opportunity to do, is these folks know that it's a safe place for them to land, and that the people who are there and they're interacting with are people who care deeply about them and are willing to try to help bridge the gap for them.
I totally agree. I often don't realize that the very mundane things that I get to enjoy, like a shower and a bed and a regular meal every day, I often take that for granted because a lot of people don't have that same opportunity. So with that said, what do you come across people from, like, they come of all ages and from different places as well. What do you think is the main reason why they're in the position that they are? Like, what are some of the common reasons that they're in the position that they are? Like you said, they're transitional.
Yeah, so there's a variety. I think there's a variety of reasons that someone ends up living in a tent or on the streets. And inevitably, it's a series of roadblocks, right, that they couldn't overcome, whether that be a roadblock with the breakdown of their family or loss of family members. Oftentimes that's the case. Divorce. It's usually there's some sort of moment in time that sort of transitioned things into a downward spiral, and then multiple roadblocks from that moment forward. So I liken it to like the worst experience you've ever had in your life, and then somebody said everything that you need from this moment forward you need to put in a backpack and put in a backpack, and all you have are your 2 feet in your backpack to get you where you need to be in life. So if you can begin to see how that struggle happens, and the definitely the key pieces of mental health and addiction are certainly prominent among our community, although I think oftentimes they're the blame for everyone's houselessness, and that really isn't the case. Everyone's unique. So I hope that answers the question.
It did. I have another question too. There is a socio-political stigma attached to being homeless. You know what I mean? A lot of people find themselves apprehensive to engage with homeless people. And what do you think is the important thing that people understand about, people in those positions and interacting with them and being able to communicate with them so that we can break that stigma?
Well, I can tell you that I travel to Akron on a regular basis, and that the folks that I have built a relationship with who are houseless, I find them to be pillars for me. So I know as I'm driving down the street and I'm heading to our outreach center, that if I pass by any number of people and they see me, they're going to head to the center and they're going to see how they can help. And I find great comfort in knowing that you can build a relationship with anyone that walks the face of the earth, right? And that there doesn't have to be a stigmatism that this person is somehow going to harm me, or they're going to try to get funds from me or whatever it is, or make me feel uncomfortable. I think starting with hello is a great place to start, and determining whether that person is somebody that you need to have boundaries about, or whether that's someone that you can build a relationship just like any other healthy relationship step that you would make. I find it no different with our houseless community than meeting anyone else that walks the face of the earth.
I completely agree. One thing that we forget is that these are people, you know what I mean? And the same way I breathe air, I eat food, I can see color. These are the same way those people can see it as well. And I think oftentimes that is a pillar of light, you know what I mean? Like a glimmer of hope, even, I would say, in which people can, find an avenue to just extend a helping hand, you know what I mean? And I think one of the more important things that we need to recognize in that is that the more people who are able to engage, and who are able to extend that helping hand, is the better the community will be as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it's as simple as a nod of a head or a smile or a hello is all that person needed to feel like they were still human, and in that people were willing to communicate with them and treat them as if they are equal.
I completely agree. I come from a place where I know where it's like to feel unequal. You know what I mean? Especially given the civil unrest that arose from police brutality and unequal treatment of people of color in the community. So I understand stigma very well. And oftentimes it's difficult for me to address personal biases about people in my mind. You know what I mean? So what do you think are some things that people can address, like some biases that people have that they can address before they decide to, become a more well-rounded person and start communicating with this community?
I think first and foremost, you shouldn't let the opinion of one interaction taint the whole, right? So I always tease our houseless friends when they come by and they say, oh, so-and-so, this person treated me unfairly. And I said, yeah. I say, you know what? I'm overweight, and there are people who would not even say hello to me because I'm overweight. I always try to bring up the fact that we all have something that someone might be biased about, right? And don't let one person taint how you feel about an entire experience, and don't let them determine the path of your day. One person shouldn't have that much power over you to be negative. But imagine the stream, just a little bit of positivity and showing someone that you care about them, and even the smallest way creates quite the ripple. I like to tell the story about how I had made biscuits and sausage gravy one morning at the center, and I thought I had made enough for everyone. But as it turned out, 75 biscuits and a couple gallons of gravy for that day just wasn't enough. And as this gentleman walked away, he had the last biscuit and gravy, and around the corner came this elderly woman, and somebody was yelling, "I'm sorry, they're out of food, they're out of food." And he said, "No, ma'am, they're not out of food. They just wanted me to deliver this to you." And it was his meal, but he saw that that woman needed that meal, and he didn't say, "Oh, I'm giving you mine." He said, "This one's for you." And that was the beauty of a lot of times with our friends who are houseless, they give more than any people who I could ever imagine. They freely give what they have. And when they give, they don't give with expectation. They give as if the person already owned it. And that's what I think is probably one of the most beautiful lessons. So just give it a chance, and don't make one interaction determine how you feel about everyone, or how you're going to move about perhaps helping someone who's less fortunate than you.
I completely agree. Oftentimes people aren't coming from a place of humility. You know what I mean? And I think people in that community come from a place of the highest humility, because they are put in a position in which they have to strive with what they have, and they have to give to each other in order to survive. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
with that said, a lot can be learned. You know what I mean? There's something about perspective that can absolutely shape the way you think, and a lot of times people become products of their environment. And in that environment, I think it teaches a lot of humility.
Absolutely. So in the last week, we had a big storm. So, and the area that I live in was without power, and some people out of power for multiple days. And when the power flickers at my house, I always think, wow, this is an inconvenience. But our friends who live in tents, there is never any power, right? There is never so there can inconvenience every day. And so I always find that as like my barometer. Like, I got a little bit too comfortable, the power's out. Oh, that means, we don't have heat, or we don't have water, or we can't run the stove. And I think to myself, yep. And so I always post on Facebook every time the power goes out. Here's another reminder of the way that our friends who are houseless live every single day. So I think we can find those small things that we find as just catastrophic inconveniences in a moment in a modern world where we have conveniences, and use those as barometers for ourselves.
I completely agree. I have some friends who absolutely cannot go no longer than an hour without internet access, and and it's eye-opening to see that a different situation or a different circumstance might garner a different reaction from different people, right? And that's why I think it's more so important that we take a step away from what we know and get out of our comfort zone, and it will overall shape us as better people.
Absolutely.
I think that's all I have for right now. That's all the questions that I have. This was an excellent conversation, by the way.
Well, I appreciate the two of you reaching out, and if you ever want to come down to the center, feel free to reach out. We'd love to have you. And one of our board members also runs the Teresa Bartley Foundation, and they go out once a month on Sundays and go from tent community to tent community with food and supplies. So if anyone ever wants to jump on that bandwagon and go on the foot traffic to serve those folks, feel free to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for meeting with us
Absolutely.
again. This was great.
You guys have a blessed day and a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
too.
You too.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.